The year 2018 was an exciting time to be a wrestling fan. Professional wrestling outside of the major monopoly in America was finally starting to grow in popularity, and a lot of that can be attributed to wrestling faction The Elite. If you're watching this video, chances are you already know who The Elite are. They're one of the major reasons why AEW was a possibility. This was a group of wrestlers that a lot of fans gravitated towards because they were never afraid to put up a fight. And the perfect example of this would be the Wednesday Night War between AEW and NXT, which is just about to come to an end. For just a little over a year now, AEW and NXT have been battling it out every Wednesday night to become the top wrestling show for the night. But what if I told you that the founding fathers of AEW, The Elite, had previously gone head to head with NXT before AEW was even a thing? That's right, it happened in New Orleans, Louisiana over WrestleMania weekend in 2018. On April 7th, 2018, the night before WrestleMania 34, NXT Takeover New Orleans went head to head with Ring of Honor's Supercard of Honor. Yes, this Ring of Honor show was a show built heavily around The Elite. Their popularity was at an all-time high, and they had a hot storyline going in the Bullet Club Civil War, and therefore this Ring of Honor show was seen more as a Bullet Club Elite show. But they would be going head to head with an NXT product that was firing on all cylinders. It was in its prime. So this made for a hell of a fight over WrestleMania weekend that year. And in this video, I'll be talking about both shows and giving you my thoughts on who I thought came out on top that night. This is Tranquilo Club, and this is the Forgotten First Night. The Elite and NXT went head to head. So as said before, Supercard of Honor was built heavily around the Bullet Club Civil War story as Kenny Omega and Cody Rhodes were battling it out to be the leader. It was a story that many argued wasn't as good as it could have been, but in my opinion, I really enjoyed it, and it made being the Elite must watch every week. And like I said, this was the Elite / Bullet Club nearing their peak popularity. I had already bought WrestleMania tickets that year when they had announced Shinsuke Nakamura would be facing AJ Styles for the WWE title, and yeah, I regret that decision after seeing the mediocre match they had, but that's besides the point. What I'm getting at is, when I was in New Orleans, I had a choice: go to NXT Takeover or watch Kenny Omega versus Cody Rhodes at Supercard of Honor. And while I knew that at minimum Takeover would be a satisfying show, I was just more of a fan of the Elite, Bullet Club, New Japan in general, so I chose to go to Supercard of Honor. And let me tell you, that night NXT ended up having one of the best WWE shows ever, and Ring of Honor had, well, they had a Ring of Honor show. I mean, this Supercard of Honor show was loaded with fantastic talent. There's no reason why it shouldn't have been a fantastic show. I mean, they had a white-hot Kenny Omega who in just a few months was about to win the IWGP Heavyweight title. Add to that the other members of the Elite, like Cody Rhodes, the Young Bucks, Hangman Page, and some of the top talents from Japan like Tomohiro Ishii, Kota Ibushi, and the ace himself, the GOAT, Hiroshi Tanahashi. You show me a list of all those competitors on paper, and hell yeah, I'm gonna want to go to that event. Now, the more I talk like this about the show, the more it starts to sound like I hated it, but I didn't. It was an enjoyable show, especially being there live. But there's a reason why this event was just sort of, kind of forgotten. There were a few good matches on this show, don't get me wrong, but none of them were blow-away excellent quality like the ones at NXT Takeover that night. Opposite of Supercard of Honor across the city, we got this excellent 5-match card at NXT Takeover New Orleans. Yes, 5 matches, the old school Takeover format. I loved that era of NXT so much. It just gave every match time to breathe, and therefore every match felt like it had actually earned its spot on the card. All killer, no filler, if you will. Now, with that being said, this takeover is best known for the opening match and the main event. The opener was that crazy 6-man ladder match to crown the first ever NXT North American champion. In a match where he was just insanely over with the crowd, Adam Cole would win to become the inaugural NXT North American champion. Then in the main event, you had Tommaso Ciampa taking on Johnny Gargano in an unsanctioned match. In a match that would see Gargano come out on top via submission, it would earn rave reviews from fans and critics alike. Both the opener and the closer were receiving glowing reviews at NXT Takeover New Orleans. Meanwhile, across the city, Ring of Honor and the talent at Supercard of Honor were gonna have to match this excellent takeover show. And honestly, besides maybe 3 matches on this card, it was never gonna be able to match NXT Takeover's quality. Because for one, the Supercard of Honor card had 9 matches compared to Takeover's 5. That meant this show was going to be a drag. It wasn't going to flow nicely like Takeover across the city. Also, outside of a few matches, this card just seemed thrown together to get people on the card. There were only 3 matches going into this show that I felt could have exceeded anything on Takeover, and that was Kenny Omega versus Cody Rhodes, Hangman Adam Page versus Kota Ibushi, and the Young Bucks and Flip Gordon versus SCU in the ladder match. Remember how I said Tomohiro Ishii and Hiroshi Tanahashi were on this show? Well, the both of them were wasted in my opinion in a bunch of nothing matches. Ishii had a short match against Punishment Martinez aka Damian Priest, and Hiroshi Tanahashi was in a random World Tag Team title match where he teamed with Jay Lethal to take on the Briscoes. It just wasn't a good use for them in my opinion, and I remember even being in the crowd when Tanahashi came out and everybody was kind of disappointed that this was the match he was going to be in. Then the other 3 matches that I mentioned before that I thought could have been excellent were just pretty good in my opinion. And that's just how I remember this show in general. Everything was just kind of okay. Hangman and Ibushi had a pretty good match that I remember thinking it could have been better, but it was still pretty damn good. I mean, these two are elite level talents, no pun intended, but I remember thinking someday down the line they're gonna have a match that is all-time great territory. Then there was the 6-man ladder match with the Young Bucks, and let me just say that Young Bucks matches are best experience live. They're a hell of a good time. This might have been my favorite match of the entire show, and in my opinion the Young Bucks just don't miss, especially in gimmick matches. But it was a good ladder match, but it wasn't even the best ladder match of the night, as there was that 6-man ladder match in NXT Takeover. Then there was the main event, the match that drew the house, Kenny Omega versus Cody Rhodes. And it wasn't even the main event. Look, I get not trying to devalue your world title, but this was the reason why everybody was there. This match should have gone on last. But Ring of Honor made the poor decision to have this match go on second to last. Anyway, the crowd was super hot for this the entire time. This was the big moments that everybody came to see. Like I said, this was the Bullet Club Civil War coming to a head. Months of build-up, months of infighting, months of being the elite, being a must-watch show, all led to this. I know a lot of people say this match didn't live up to the hype, but I really enjoyed it, especially due to the live experience. So while my opinion for this match might be skewed a little bit because I was there live, I wouldn't go as far as to call it one of my favorite matches ever or anything like that. It was a good match. And I'm not even gonna lie, when this match was over, I had no interest in watching the real main event, so I left early to beat the traffic. The best way I can describe Supercard of Honor 2018 is that it was just good. You know, it wasn't memorable, and that's the reason why nobody talks about it. And I think that's more of an indictment on Ring of Honor and not the talent. I mean, think about it. The majority of the talent on this show moved on to bigger and better things, the Elite in particular. It's really fascinating to me because Ring of Honor had the Elite at arguably the peak of their popularity, but they could never really put on a killer show with them. And later that very year, the Elite said, fine, we'll do it ourselves, and they put on the biggest independent wrestling show in American history. A show they funded and booked themselves, and it ended up receiving critical acclaim from fans and critics. So I don't put this one on the Elite, I put it on Ring of Honor for failing to capitalize. I remember getting back to my hotel that night after Supercard of Honor and everybody was talking about NXT Takeover and how good it was. And so I went back to my room and I watched it, and it was amazing. I was honestly blown away by how much better it was than Supercard of Honor. I don't think it's even up for debate. NXT had the better show that night. And it's crazy to look back on now because the Elite have just been putting on some of the best wrestling weekly TV shows with Dynamite ever since then, while directly competing with NXT. So what I'm getting at is, what did both sides learn over that WrestleMania weekend in 2018? Well, I think the Elite realized that they're more than capable of putting on an excellent show, but they'd have to do it on their own terms. And they proved that they were right later that year at All In. All In was a huge learning experience for the Elite, and it gave them that push they needed to get AEW off the ground. I did a full video on All In and why it was so important for the wrestling industry. I highly recommend you check it out if you haven't already. I'll leave a link to it in the description below. As for NXT, they proved that very night that they were the best in-ring product in America, and that it was going to take something special, something new, something unexpected to beat them. And it was probably on this night where the follow that my friends mentality from NXT was born, a catchphrase that they would coin prior to the beginning of the Wednesday Night War, but that would be retired immediately after Dynamite's premiere. A lot of lessons were learned over that WrestleMania weekend in 2018. The Elite knew they needed change to fully realize their vision, and so AEW was born. And since Dynamite's debut on TNT, AEW has been competing with NXT every single week, and more often than not, they've come out on top. This isn't a video where I'll say that AEW has been clearly better than NXT the whole time. If you enjoyed NXT better, that's perfectly fine. What I'm trying to say with this video is that almost exactly 3 years ago, the Elites were outdone by NXT due to matters outside of their own hands. They weren't running the show then, they're running the show now, so if they fail or win against NXT, it's gonna be because of their own doing. And it's made for a very compelling 18 months where NXT and AEW went head to head every single week. Some people might have not liked the competition aspect of it all because there was some toxicity on both sides, but I must admit it was a fun time to once again have two wrestling shows on at the exact same time. But let the record show that this unofficially started 3 years ago over WrestleMania weekend in 2018. That night, the Elite learned a big lesson in going all in.